I wanted to begin by mentioning that the fact that President Biden decided not to run for re-election has had the positive effect of kind of eliminating the double standard that had existed when he was still running, where I felt the mass media and many voters were focusing only on the signs of aging in Biden and ignoring the fact of Trump's glaring difficulties fashioning coherent sentences, arguments, and answers to questions. Clearly, Trump has many more symptoms of dementia than Biden ever had. But whether he's demented or not, there's another, I think, even more important question. How are we to understand his habit of constantly telling falsehoods? The Washington Post, I think, had calculated that he'd made at least 30,000 false statements. So they're just direct contradictions of factual reality. Now, it strikes me there are two kind of logical possibilities here. Either he believes these falsehoods or he doesn't. If he believes them, then he is by definition out of touch with reality, which is one definition of psychosis. You could say he's suffering from delusions of persecution, that he's being persecuted by the election boards who refused to say that he was elected president. And delusions of persecution about immigrants from Latin America, Muslim countries, Haiti, and so forth. And of course, he's now finally included the Jews, naturally, as you could only wait for that. So you could say, well, maybe he has delusions of persecution. And of course, delusions of grandeur, saying, I'm a very stable genius, and all the other self-congratulatory comments that were quoted earlier today. But if he does not believe in these falsehoods, but he keeps saying them, then it means he's telling lies. And people who habitually tell lies, certainly on his scale, that's one of the main symptoms of a personality disorder called antisocial personality disorder, which often coexists with narcissistic personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, and so forth, all of which you could say he gives public evidence of having symptoms of. And I say this, I've not examined him personally, but I'm saying that he has revealed more of himself than many patients in psychiatric clinics have. So we hardly need to. But so my question, though, is whether or not he has these mental illness diagnoses, the serious issue is his dangerousness. Because people can be mentally ill without being dangerous. I mean, most mentally ill people never commit a serious act of violence in their life. They're not dangerous, maybe to themselves sometimes more. But so I want to focus on his dangerousness. Now, what does that mean? The most dangerous mass murderers in history, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and so forth, Mussolini, probably never killed anybody themselves at all, or if they did, as a few individuals. But they've gone down in history as the greatest or worst mass murderers in history because they incited their followers, millions of followers, to commit millions of murders for them. And in principle, that I think raises the question I would have about Trump. I'd say that his dangerousness isn't what he himself can do as an individual. It's his capacity and his ability to engage millions of followers to agree with him and to support him in whatever he wants to do, which could be, of course, extremely dangerous. Now, I'm trying to understand the psychology of the Trump voters then, because that's where the real danger is, the people that support him. And anything that's complicated, there are multiple causal mechanisms. I don't pretend that what I'm going to say is the complete explanation at all. There are many causes for these problems. But the one I did want to raise is something that has not been mentioned. And that is, I'm reminded of what French psychiatrists observed in the 19th century, and which I've seen in my own clinical practice. And that's the phenomenon they call folie à deux, where a dominant, influential family member develops, say, a paranoid delusion of persecution. The police are spying on us, or there's an influencing machine that's controlling our thoughts, or some, crazy delusion. And then a dependent, influenceable family member will make the assumption, gee, that must be correct, because this person is saying it. This is the dominant person in our family. And they just, they adopt the same delusion. But, and this is the really important thing, what they also discovered was when they separated the two, the person who was not independently psychotic dropped the psychotic belief and, just show that they were capable of reality testing in a perfectly normal way. I'd say the greatest historical example of that, I'd say, occurred in Germany during the 1930s, when a dominant figure named Hitler came up with delusions of persecution, that the Jews were persecuting the Germans and they had to be exterminated in order for the Germans to protect themselves. And millions of people with no history of criminality, these weren't psychopaths, but millions of just normal German people said, well, this must be true, because he says it's true, and we believe it and we'll act accordingly. And you know what resulted. But then what's really significant is once Hitler was out of the picture, after he'd lost the war and committed suicide, the Germans recovered their sanity. They stopped being genocidal and so on, and in fact developed a sane and rational democracy, which at this point in history is actually even more stable than our own is. Our own democracy is, I think, under greater threat. Yes, they have threats. They have some neo-Nazis there. But the fact is, they haven't elected the president or prime minister. We elected Trump once, and the American people could well elect him again. So what I'm saying is I think that there is such a thing as a mass psychosis or collective psychosis, but I put the word psychosis in quotation marks, because it's not an independently standing paranoid delusion. And I think, again, if we can get Trump out of the picture, I am hoping and expecting that many of the people who've supported him at least will regain some degree of sanity. How has Trump been able to influence people in this way? So, first of all, I think he has softened them up. The best description of how that works I found in a passage in Hannah Arendt's masterpiece, The Origins of Totalitarianism, which he said the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist Stalinist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction and the distinction between true and false no longer exists. And I'd say that is the mindset that Trump has been the role model for. I think that's the mindset that he has created. Because if you lose those distinctions between reality and falsehood, you can believe anything, including what this crazy leader tells you. My sense is, at this point, it's up to the American people and the voters to eliminate Trump the same way in the 19th century the psychiatrists separate the dominant psychotic family member from the dependent ones. I can only say that if the American people, the American voters, do not do this, if they re-elect Trump, you can only tremble for the future of this country and the rest of the world. So it's up to us, the people.